you start?
It's rolling.
On July 30th, 5 days after his 16th birthday, one of my students was riding his bike home. It was 6 p.m. It was still light out. He was hit by a pickup truck and killed. I thought I knew what it was like to be sad before. I've lost family members, I've lost students. It doesn't touch this. I call him my student because he was. He was a karate student of mine for 3 years. He was not one of 25 in a class of mine for a year. He was one of 12, and then one of 2, and then one of 2 3 times a week through COVID when everybody else left or quit or stopped or couldn't. I'm in mourning for him. On August 7th, a week and a day later, my son was born. I caught him. I cut the umbilical cord. I named him to honor my student. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to honor someone. I've been thinking a lot about how beauty and calamity are not different things. I've learned that there's a difference between calamity and tragedy. Tragedy is a genre or a piece of art in which somebody falls low, lower than they thought they could go, thanks to a flaw in their character or fate. Calamity is an event in which something horrible happens. In the case of my student, it was unfair, it was undeserved. It helps me to believe in heaven, and it helps me to think of this life, like C.S. Lewis said, as taking place in the Shadowlands. It makes me feel like this is not real. Like what's happening here is just a hint or a taste of what's to come. The events, being hit by a truck versus being born, they're both bloody, they're both violent. In these cases, they were both unmedicated. My wife didn't take any drugs. My wife wasn't induced. It was entirely natural. She dealt with that pain the entire time. I helped, I coached her. I squeezed her hips for 13 hours straight. And at the end, there was a new person born, bearing the same name. I think that calamity is love, is beauty flipped inside out. If you have to struggle and push for anything good, it stands to reason that dealing with the passing of my student will produce good things, because this has been one of the hardest things that I have experienced. Totally unsolvable, unfixable. I can't do anything about it. But it hits hard every single day. And yet, it's taught me to look for other people like him. Because he wasn't always as special as he was. The relationship wasn't always as significant as it was. So now, I'm looking at all of my other students and thinking, you know, are you going to be the next? Are you going to be like this? Is this going to be a relationship where you stay and you put in the work, you grow, and you learn? And what's hard and what's unpleasant in the moment develops you and develops us, becomes a friendship based on adversity instead of just a one-way power dynamic with a teacher who's, asking the student to do hard things. If you've seen 4 Weddings and a Funeral, you'll know Funeral Blues by W.H. Auden. Beautiful poem, and I understood it before, but now I understand it on a deeper level. It starts, stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone. I'll spoil it and give you the final 4 lines. The stars are not wanted now. Put out every one. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour out the ocean and sweep up the wood. For nothing now can ever come to any good. That's been part of the feeling of these last 3 weeks for me. But at the same time, I've seen the beauty of the community coming together to support the family. And I can't even imagine, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I knew him for 3 years, right? Holding my son, who just hit 2 weeks old, holding my son and thinking, 16 years ago, this is what his parents were doing. I cannot even imagine how much more this is for them. And his siblings. And his friends who knew him for longer. It makes sense why The samurai were also poets, because there's pain seeing your friends die that you need ways of dealing with it. Rory Miller, in one of his books, talks about how young men went to the monastery to find enlightened teachers. But the people that they were learning from were not career monks. The people they were learning from were soldiers who retired to the monastery. And his point is that you don't meditate into enlightenment, you suffer into it. The monastery was the only place that retired soldiers could go, where they could have a peaceful life. But the truths that they learned, the suffering they experienced, the thing that made them truly wise, that was experienced on the battlefield, when their friends died, where they suffered, where they faced other people trying to kill them. I'm not saying that this is like being a soldier for me, but I am saying that this has made me better, that this is teaching me, that this is growing me. This is like wrestling with God. You wrestle with God, you get a limp. The saints and the sages limp. There's an Aeschylus quote that I'm going to paraphrase. He says, "Drop by drop, suffering which cannot be comprehended transforms into wisdom by God's terrible grace."